Hello there, welcome to Cubco's Cantina. Grab yourself a Bantha chai and let's talk about some Star Wars. So here's the thing, I think Star Wars canon, specifically the book side of things, is stuck, for lack of a better word. Now just a disclaimer before I continue, this isn't a video about whether or not canon is better than Legends is better than canon, legend, none of that crap. This is about an issue that I personally have with the Star Wars canon on the book side of things at the moment, and that issue is that it's stuck. Stuck in the time period set out by the visual media, which is to say the Skywalker Saga, the movies and the TV shows set within that era. For the nerds in the audience, that is a period in universe around 32 BBY to 35 ABY, a span of around 67 years or so. We've got a whole galaxy to explore, vast amounts of time and space, and yet we seemingly can't break out of that 67-year period. Star Wars canon books, they're stuck. When we look back at the expanded universe, what we now know as Legends, it was expansive and it covered a lot of material in a relatively short amount of time. I don't know if I ever realized that the New Jedi Order series, which is a 19-book series, was released over a 5-year period. That is insane output. Now the New Jedi Order starts off in universe in 25 ABY, which was about 20 years after Return of the Jedi, and it moved the story forward in time, just like follow-up series Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi. And that's the thing that Legends did a whole lot better than the current canon, in my opinion, moving stories forward in the timeline. Now, there's a very obvious reason for this. When the EU was really popping off, we weren't getting the movies or TV shows that were set in the time periods that the books were exploring. Now, New Jedi Order, that began in 1999, which was the same year as The Phantom Menace. So the writers kind of had a blank slate to work with in the time period that they were in. Obviously things like the original Thrawn trilogy, you know, Heir to the Empire and everything, and the Jedi Academy trilogy and other books of the like, set a decent foundation for them to build upon. They still had a lot of free reign, especially when you consider that the EU was a different universe to the story of the movies. Now look, we could argue all day about whether or not George Lucas or anyone else considered the EU to be canon at the time, but for all intents and purposes, it was its own thing, separate from George's vision. Despite him giving pointers and restricting certain things here and there, it was its own thing. But anyway, if we jump over to the canon side of things, the books, and in this case the comics, tell a bit of a different story. Instead of things moving forward in the timeline, the current canon seems more focused on the in-between. It's clear that they want the story to be up there on the screen for everyone to see, whether that be their TV shows or their movies, you know, animated shows, live action, what have you. And because of that, I don't see any real attempts at moving storylines forward on the page. And I think that the Star Wars book canon is really suffering for that. Sure, we get things fleshed out more in the books and comics, and some of it is really good stuff. Rise of Kylo Ren comic gives greater context to him in the films, the mainline comics can fill in the gaps between the original trilogy, and the books are mostly, well, they're stuck in prequel mode, as I like to call it. Bloodline, an incredible novel from Claudia Gray, is a prequel to The Force Awakens, The Living Force by John Jackson Miller. It's a prequel to The Phantom Menace, and you'll find that with nearly every canon book. It's either a prequel or just filling out more of a story set between two other projects. Even the video game tie-ins usually follow this formula. Low Red Moon by Mike Chen, acting as a prequel to characters we meet in Star Wars Outlaws. Jedi Battle Scars was a prequel to Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Inferno Squad, a prequel to Battlefront 2, and on and on and on. You see this with almost every single book in the new canon, and it's almost always a prequel to a story that's already been told, or it's just filling in the gaps between two other stories that have already been told on screen, and that's whether it be a movie, a TV show, or video game. And this is just where I take issue with it, because don't get me wrong, there's some really great stuff in the canon books, just like there was in the Legend stuff. There was also a fair share of Legend stuff that was pretty meh, just like there is with canon. Books like Bloodline, which I mentioned earlier, are fantastic. Anything by Alexander Freed, in my opinion, is a 10 out of 10 in the current canon. Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher is great. But I would argue that most, if not all of it, don't move anything forward. It's always set between something else or as a prequel to something. There's no real continuation of character storylines. What happened to the galaxy after the rise of Skywalker? We don't know, because they don't want to explore it on the page. They want to explore it on the screen, through whether that be Star Wars Starfighter, which comes out next year, or the new Jedi Order Rey movie, if it ever actually makes it into any sort of real production, which honestly seems unlikely, as it has been in various states of development hell since 2023. But it just seems that they want the story, when it moves forward, to be on the screen and not on the page. The page, the canon, the books, the comics, they're almost this secondary thing to them, it feels like, that they're not very important. And as someone that grew up reading the EU, where the books felt important, despite, again, being this sort of separate continuity, not really the real story, but, you know, it felt more important. It felt more tangible in a way. Which is funny, because everything coming out in Star Wars, unless stated otherwise, is considered to be canon, and yet it feels almost lesser in a way. And so while they want the story moving forward to take place on the screen, the problem is Disney and Lucasfilm just aren't getting stuff onto the screen in the first place. Now, I understand where they're coming from. A little bit. We're getting more visual media content now than we ever did back in the time of the EU, at least in terms of TV shows and animation. Movies are just starting to make a comeback now, with Mandalorian and Grogu this year and Star Wars Starfighter next year. So it does make sense to keep the bulk of the storytelling there, I guess, because that's where they've got the most quote-unquote eyes. But at the same time, it now leaves these huge, obvious gaps in this unexplored timeline that are just begging to be explored. Again, Star Wars just feels completely stuck in between The Phantom Menace and The Rise of Skywalker. It seems almost too scared to venture out too far either side of it. This is one of the reasons why the High Republic was a huge breath of fresh air to me, being set 200 years before The Phantom Menace, and it was a really fun time. There were some really great novels, a couple of misses for sure, but it was out there, it was different, and it was only very loosely connected to the current Skywalker Saga. I need them to do more of this kind of stuff. Hell, go 100 or 200 years into the future, sort of like Star Wars Legacy did. Get weird with it. Just move the timeline forward. That's all I really want, and in all honesty, I think it's something the franchise needs. You know the expression, as wide as an ocean but as deep as a puddle? That kind of feels like the book world of Star Wars at the moment, and it's a damn shame, because books are a great medium to expand and move stuff forward. They're great. The EU, man, the Legend stuff, it's awesome stuff. I've been trying to track down so many of those books that I read as a kid growing up, and just revisiting them has been so much fun. And I think that's what the current canon needs to start doing. Have these big, expansive series that just are set in this galaxy, but outside of the time period that they're stuck in. I still get excited for new books and everything, but once you notice that it's all set up for something already released, it does start to put a bit of a dampener on things. Upcoming book Legacy by Madeline Rue, who did a great short story in From a Certain Point of View, is one that I'm really looking forward to. It focuses on Rey and Leia before the rise of Skywalker. It's another prequel. Now, I'm a fan of Rue's writing, and I want the sequel trilogy era explored and expanded upon more, so I'm excited for this novel, but at the same time, it still feels the same as everything else that we've gotten in the current book canon. Like I said before, the stories in Legends with New Jedi Order or the X-Wing series, we got to introduce new characters and move the stories forward alongside characters that we already knew from the films. I'm sincerely hoping that with Starfighter releasing next year and it being the first canon visual media to move past the rise of Skywalker, that Lucasfilm, Disney, or whoever decides what goes into the books can open up a bit and really start telling some new stories not in that time period. I do apologize, my light has been dying on and off for the last couple of minutes. My bad. That's it though, I just wanted to get that off my chest. I just think the books need to move forward and not just always be another prequel. That's gonna do it for me. Thank you for watching. Got more stuff on the way, mostly about Star Wars Zero Company. It is the thing I am most looking forward to this year, which, you know, as a video game, yeah, it's technically another prequel because it's set in the Clone Wars, but still very excited for that game. Anyway, thank you for watching. Make sure you follow me here at Cupcos Cantina on YouTube and over at Cupcos Cantina on TikTok. I changed my name over there, decided I should match up with it here. Anyway, once again, thank you for watching. Make sure you follow me here, and may the force be with you always.